This episode is sponsored by Kendo UI. Kendo UI allows you to build better apps faster. They have a comprehensive library ranging from data grids and charts to buttons and sliders. Plus, you can use their components as plain JavaScript as well as in Angular, React, and Vue. They have a large collection of customizable popular themes like Bootstrap and Material. Go check them out at javascriptjabber.com/KendoUI. Hey everybody, this week we're talking to Brady, is it Gaster?
Gaster. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't see his badge and I wasn't sure. And we're going to be talking about SignalR, which is, I guess, an offering by Microsoft.
Well, it started in, I think, like in 2011. That's about the time that I got involved with it. Actually wasn't at Microsoft yet.
Okay.
I discovered the technology. It was something that two guys on, at the time, the ASP.NET team, now the .NET team.
Right.
Damon Edwards, who was a PM, and who now owns pretty much everything in .NET. And David Fowler, who was one of the best devs I've ever met. The guy's out of control. But they kind of had a mutual idea about doing something with real-time and HTTP, because those two concepts go together so well. And they kind of started working on it as a pet project. And in the process of doing it, they made a NuGet package out of it, made a pretty legitimate library out of it. And folks like me and some guys back east, Kevin Griffin and some other folks, got really hooked on it. And we started coming up with all kinds of creative ways for it. Just so everybody knows, the way I met this gentleman was I was jumping up and down in the podcast booth because I'd just gotten the demo working for tomorrow, and I was pretty excited about it. But effectively what it is a way that you can do real-time HTTP, and obviously WebSockets comes to mind.
Right.
But what they did, which was fantastic, is Damon and David kind of had this mentality. They were like, WebSockets are kind of the hot, buttery love right now in real-time HTTP, but it's not going to be the last thing that comes out.
Right.
So if we just tell everybody to write to WebSockets, whenever something comes out that's better than that, like, they got to change.
Right.
So they said, let's create a series of abstractions, both in JavaScript and .NET, and now we have them for Java, and I believe there's one for Node.js. I'm not sure. I can't remember all the details. But they basically came up with this idea, let's try WebSockets first.
Right.
If WebSockets won't work, we'll fall off and try server-side events or long polling, and eventually go all the way back down to just long polling, make a long request, or just poll. So it's an intelligent way of figuring out what the server and the client can support. They basically iterate through a series of handshakes. When the handshakes fail, they say, well, I can't do that. So then they go to the next one and the next one, until you get down to what you and I probably had to do when the PMs told us to make it look like it was real time. Just have something refreshing in the background all the time.
Yep.
So when SignalR kind of came out, it was, everybody kind of jumped on it. It was like kind of an exciting thing. There were some similar technologies at the time. I think it was Socket.io in the Node community. And then Pusher came around, and Pusher was kind of a productized version of it. At the time, since SignalR, the core component of SignalR is this thing called a hub, and the hub lives on the server. And when I say the server, I mean the one server. So if you have a concept of a web farm, you kind of run into a snafu where if you connect to server A and then I connect to server B and I send a message, you won't get it because it's only going to hit that hub. So if I had a whiteboard, it'd be easier.
Because what you're talking about then is how do I coordinate between all of the different nodes?
Exactly. So there was a couple different implementations of what they called a backplane. And the idea was they would put the backplane behind the servers.
Right.
And that would either be, I think we had 3 at the time, Redis for folks that were in cloud and whatnot, Service Bus for folks that were in Azure. And Clemens Vaster is the guy that helped build Service Fabric. Service Bus. He actually helped out with that backplane. And then they added a SQL one for folks that were on-prem. So they ended up having 3, and they're really hard to implement. Like if you wanted to implement one on top of Oracle or something else, it was just very difficult. I tried to implement one on top of storage, talked to Damon and David about it, and they were just like, we really appreciate you trying this. Just stop. So it's not going to be a good day. So eventually, some of our peers in the Shanghai dev office came up with the idea of building out what you now know as this week of the GA'd Azure SignalR service. And what the Azure SignalR service does is effectively sit in Azure. It does all the authentication and handles everything. And it's kind of a layer in front of your application server. So it's not necessarily as backplaney as the backplanes used to be. It's a far more robust situation. And what's nice is they GA'd this week. And then there's a lot of stuff that's actually happened in the serverless stuff and functions. One of our CDAs, a gentleman named Anthony Chu, wrote a series of bindings that you can effectively put into an Azure function. so that if the Azure function runs and you want to notify your web app that may be called the Azure function in an asynchronous capacity, like once the function runs, it can actually call out to a SignalR hub using that service, and it round robins and goes out to all the servers. So, and the nice thing about that is it's not just for .NET. It's for .NET, JavaScript, Java. We have clients for all of it. So SignalR has really come a long way, but there's still definitely some improvements we could continue to make. I saw some benchmarks. There was currently I think it was something around just over 1 million. I think it was not 1 million connections. I think 1 million messages. That's how much it could handle. There were a couple of small improvements that were made, a couple little bugs that we fixed, and that's gone over like 2.3 million.
Oh, wow.
In like the latest stuff. So the numbers are pretty incredible.
2.3 million in how long?
I think it was a second or an hour. I can't remember what it was. I'll pull up the slide here, and I'll make sure I get my numbers right for you. Because I've actually got a slide from one of our devs, and I can take a peek at that and make sure I'm quoting the numbers right and show you what that looks like. But, from a JavaScript perspective, it's great because you've got all of the JavaScript clients. So you could actually like dial that in on a public website, if you want to. And then it supports all the authorization and authentication stuff that's built right into ASP.NET. So you don't have to do anything special.
Right.
So that's kind of a good thing. I'm actually finding those numbers right now. I've got a dev deck here, so half of it I'm not going to know how to parse it down for you, but I can definitely show you these numbers here. While I'm finding this, you got any other questions?
Well, yeah. So essentially what we're talking about is, just some real-time coordination between apps.
WebSockets messages per second. 1 million, and then after 2.6 million. So that's 2.6 million messages a second.
Wow. And I can just hook that up the way that I handle WebSockets normally, or?
That's the good part. You wouldn't really even have to worry about the WebSocket part. That's the nice thing about the SignalR clients.
So there's a client library.
There's a client. There's a few different client libraries. There's a client library for .NET, one for Java, and then one for JavaScript.
Right.
Effectively, you have a concept called a connection. You build the connection by passing in the URL, and then the API literally gets connection.on, and you give it the name of the method, and then you put your callback in there. So it was very similar to like promise-based development for JavaScript folks. And, one of the things that we've seen is that a lot of devs in the beginning at SignalR, they would use SignalR for sending and receiving.
Right.
If you really start to think about it, there's nothing wrong with REST. And there isn't a client for every language and every platform for SignalR. There is a client in every single language and every platform for HTTP. Right. So if you want to send a message to the server, it's usually okay for you to do something with just a web API or some sort of RESTful approach. But then on the server, something happens, and that's when you use SignalR to push back out. So if you think about SignalR as a push type technology, I think that kind of diminishes it a little bit, but the client APIs are deceptively simple. Right. You literally just say connection.on. In the original SignalR, we had automatic reconnects set up so that if for whatever reason closed your lid, open your lid up later, it would automatically reconnect. The problem with that was we would also try to replay all the messages that have been queued up. And that led to all kinds of problems. So over the past probably 2-3 years, the devs have really worked hard to kind of back some of those decisions off. And one of the things was we turned off automatic reconnects. Right. But the reconnect logic is as simple as, you just have a loop in your code that says, if my connection breaks, just start it up again. Right. And usually what most people do is they'll do a pause on that for 5-6 seconds so that if it dies, you just start making a pound again. And what's nice is for folks that are in Azure App Service, as an example, I can actually push code up to an Azure App Service and have WebSockets turned off. And when I make the request, if I was looking in the debugger, you can actually see in the debugger that it tries to make that WebSocket request and has an error. It can't find the endpoint because WebSocket's not turned on. Then I go into the Azure portal and I just hit the on button, turn WebSockets up, refresh the page. Now it's doing WebSockets. So A is going to be service and events, I believe, and B would be WebSockets. So, but the nice thing is the way I think about SignalR is WebSockets is not going to be the last thing. If the WebSocket APIs change, they're going to change the WebSocket APIs inside of SignalR. If something comes out next year that's better than WebSockets, if you're writing the SignalR, we just add that to SignalR. Now all of your abstractions are going to continue to fly. Right. So
that makes sense.
Yep.
I'm a little curious then, how do you handle authentication, especially on like a front end web application?
It's pretty much bearer token based. In the ASP.NET world, I'll speak to that because that's kind of where I come from. We have server side things where we can authorize attributes and that kind of thing we can put on our controllers. You can put those same...
So the server side is a lot more straightforward, right?
A lot more straightforward, yeah. But what's nice is if you authenticate to an ASP.NET website, or you authenticate to, but that's the nice thing about the service too. You would authenticate to the site, then the site passes the token to the service, and then, back and forth. So you're still authenticating the proper
I got
way.
you.
So it basically just sits on top of from the server side, it sits on top of the same plumbing as, the ASP.NET authorization authentication stuff works.
Right. So on my server side, I would essentially say, you're good. I would authenticate for you, and then it just talks directly to SignalR.
Exactly. I think, I haven't sniffed the packets or looked at it in a while, but I think effectively what happens is you do the authentication with an OAuth and OID, you get your bearer token, and then all those bearer tokens just get tacked on top.
Yeah, you just pass it up in a cookie or something.
Cookie based, yeah, that's exactly right. So but it's a pretty good way of doing things. We actually, we just recently had the .NET Conf conference up in Redmond on Channel 9, and we had all night, it was a 24-hour thing. We had people on the Visual Studio Twitch channel. But we also had a couple of mixer shows, and then we had the Channel 9 feed.
Right.
So we started thinking, well, people aren't going to want to refresh the page unless you use SignalR. So we put SignalR in there, and then we thought, oh, crap, what if somebody hacks it and they send in, some YouTube video we don't want people to be showing on the .NET
that'd be
site.
fun.
So then we had to add security, and people were like, well, how's the SignalR stuff going to work? I'm like, done. You know what I mean? It just works. So that's pretty fantastic. And then we started wondering what's going to happen when we put the service in. Do we have to authenticate to the service? And that's when we learned that those tokens just flow. So it's really your app doing the authing.
Right.
And that thing just routes the messages back.
Which is basically how we want it to work anyway, right?
Exactly.
I know who you are.
Exactly.
Here you go.
You don't want the service to have to know too.
No,
so,
exactly.
Right, exactly. So it's been cool. But again, the APIs are pretty simple. So.
Right. So you hook it all up, and I'm assuming you just, you put the client JavaScript into your bundle.
Exactly. The workflow is npm install ASP.NET SignalR, and then you basically copy, if you want the men file, you would copy SignalR.js and or SignalR men.js into your JavaScript folder. Put them in your client, and then write your own code to manage your connections. And what people need to do is they really need to initialize that connection. And then they wire up all their event handlers. So, on chat message arrived, on kickout message arrived, whatever.
Okay.
You wire up all those handlers.
So you determine what kinds of events go through.
Exactly. And what's really cool is, if you think about that hub is, the center of the world, you could effectively have public class hub inherits from hub and then nothing else.
Right.
And you could have JavaScript on that side and JavaScript on that side. And literally, you're saying just send it over. The other side knows what to do with it.
Right.
But there could be no code in that hub. So, I've got one of my demos I'm doing tomorrow. There's absolutely no code in the hub. Everything I'm doing is I'm just doing in JavaScript. And it's nice because it just says, hey, he told you to do this, and here's your payload to do it with. And then your code just does what it needs to do. That's pretty dynamic.
That's interesting. So essentially, I could come up with my own schema for passing data.
Exactly. And
I could obfuscate it.
Absolutely.
Or encrypt it or whatever, and the other side goes, it looks like gibberish, but I know how to decrypt this.
Exactly. I know what to do with it. Yeah. So, the traditional example, even though I refuse to ever do them, is I will not do a chat example. Sorry, Anthony, if you're listening. But it's just, everybody does it. It's like the canonical example. But if I send you a message, I could say send a message and, handle the receive message event.
Right.
And I'm going to pass you, a string. Tomorrow I want to pass you a string and an emoticon and the name of the user. I just changed the code. You have to change the code on either end anyway. So, but it's great because it's just like you throw up a ping and everybody knows how to handle that ping. It's kind of cool. You could literally have a JavaScript app on one side and a JavaScript app on the other side and use the hub builder syntax, the JavaScript API. Both would have the same hub URL and each side just sending messages back.
Right.
It's really just a proxy. I don't think proxy, but it's a hub.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm wondering about, I'm trying to envision what kinds of apps you would use this for. I mean, the chat app's kind of the quintessential one, but I mean, most of the data-driven apps that I'm using, it's not that far beyond the realm of things to think, you know what? If you're worried about the data being stale, refresh, right? But other things, you see things like Google Docs and things like that, where you want the collaborative stuff going on to where you need that sort of thing going on. So I guess at what point do you start looking at this and going, okay, maybe I do need something like SignalR?
It's a great question. I actually love that question. One thing I would say about SignalR, and I hate to diminish it because I think that we have a lot of opportunities for making SignalR reliable, robust, no more dropped messages and that kind of thing. But when I do my presentations on SignalR, one of the things that I tell people is just being completely transparent. And I don't know what the exact number is. I don't know what our failure rate is.
Right.
But let's say I'm going to send you 1,000 messages with SignalR. So legitimate probability one or two of those messages is going to be dropped.
Okay.
So you wouldn't want to use SignalR to transmit your credit card data or to transmit your order data.
Right.
Because that one order that you get for 100,000 units of something might be that one message that you get dropped.
Right.
Now, that said, you can build that durability around SignalR, but I kind of caution folks, once you start doing that, kind of start thinking, like, do you have a hammer and you're trying to do a script? You know what I mean? Like, it could just be weird. UI sugar is always a good thing.
Right.
You know, if you need to know stock tickers, that's always a really fantastic example. Another example that I've done quite a bit is if I want to see live telemetry coming from the server, I'll basically have a SignalR hub that's watching some sort of a diagnostics thing and spewing it to the client. Another one that we did recently was kind of fun. In the Kubernetes community, there's a book that they wrote to kind of explain Kubernetes called a Children's Guide to How Kubernetes Works effectively.
Okay.
And there's a character in it named Fippy. And Fippy's the PHP character. So we thought, well, let's build let's kind of build an app that shows Fippy and Azure Brady. No relationship whatsoever, I promise. And then like other characters in the community, you know what I mean, with different languages, the Go, Gopher, et cetera, et cetera. So we literally had a page, and there's a Go service running in the background, and it watches, and whenever pods pop up, it throws a REST API. It makes a RESTful call to an ASP.NET app that then turns around and pops a SignalR message up to the client, and it says, oh, the Fippy app just came online, and it puts her on screen. And then when the next app comes online, it puts that on screen. So for things like that, it's really helpful. I would say that it's kind of like a poor man's pub sub, but it's not a enterprise pub sub system.
Right.
Yet. You know, I'd love to make it that one day, but it's not what it is today. But I would definitely use SignalR for things like one thing that we've seen it used for in a couple of different contexts is like driver dispatch. Like if people want to know where somebody is.
Right.
If you got GPS popping a message up, you know, you can just plot things on a map. I've seen that. I just mentioned the .NET Conf thing. We basically had a secure back end where we could say, show this feed, show this feed, show this feed. And the moment they hit the client, people saw a new video. So it was great for that. And that's kind of one of those things where if you're watching it and you hit the button, for whatever reason that message fails, you can just send it again.
Right.
You know, but I would definitely say that, you know, mission critical stuff, I would be careful. If you start trying to build around a lot of durability to it, start thinking about why you're using SignalR. It might not be the thing. But for keeping your UI fresh, that's great. One thing people have suggested before is in Entity Framework ORM that we have, we can actually monitor the SQL statements that are going back and forth and see how things are happening. I've thought it's like kind of a weird place to put a SignalR client there, so that as the database records are happening, it's sending messages up to the client to see what's going on. It's kind of a novel way to do things. But what if you see a SQL statement coming and it's half? You might think, oh, there's a bug. It might just be the SignalR message drop, some of it.
Right.
So, and then we also have a new feature. Still haven't wrapped my head around quite how it works yet, but then the later pieces of SignalR that we built out, there's actually a new streaming capability.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and at one point, you know, in the early days, SignalR did not support binary transfer. Now it does. Now, when I say streaming, I don't necessarily talking about like video or audio streaming. I mean, I don't know if we're there yet. I haven't really dug into that part. That's like 2 weeks ago that I just saw it for the first time. But if you want to send a whole bunch of numbers, if you want to send, you know, fast changing stock data, that kind of thing, streaming is great for that because you just turn it on and it just starts sending it.
Right.
And what's really nice about the streaming implementation is you can actually set up effectively cushions. You can say, I don't want you to send more than 1,000 messages at a time. I don't want to receive more than this. And you can actually control how that flow works. And that's pretty powerful. In fact, you can actually, you know, if you know you're getting big messages, you might want to throttle them from coming in. So,
and do you do that at the hub?
Do that at the hub. That's pretty low level. So you can do that at the connection of the hub level.
So you mentioned that you could just set up the hub and it just passes everything back and forth.
Right.
So what can you do at the hub? What capabilities are there as far as maybe filtering or certain types of events? Or
that's great.
How do you handle all that stuff?
That's a great question. I'll actually pull up a slide to kind of walk through it. I know you can't see the slide on the podcast, but it just kind of helps me to walk through it in my mind. One of the ways that's cool about SignalR is that you could say, like when we're talking about the API earlier, the API is deceptively simple on purpose. What we have is a situation where if you want to call out to clients, you literally say, you know, the hub has a property called clients, and clients has a property called all. And if you want to, and in this case, we're using the dynamic hub approach, I would say clients.all.doWork.
Right.
And what that's going to do is every single connected client, no matter who it is going to automatically get all those messages. Right. But at the same time, we have things hanging off of clients like caller. In caller's case, the only person that's going to get the message is going to be the person that issued the message.
Right.
So like I'm going to send you a message and it's going to come right back to me. Like maybe that's a read receipt. Right. I send you something, it tells me you got it.
Right.
Going on along, you've got others. So if I send you something, I don't want to get it because I just sent it to you. There's no reason to waste that network on me. So I send it to you and it goes out. Right. So I already know what I told you. And then this one's cool. Clients.group, and you pass in the name of the group or groups. Gotcha. And you can pass in multiple groups. So in this case, we've got, client, Damon and Glenn are 2 PMs on the team.
Right.
Andrew's a dev on the team. If the PMs wanted to say something to the devs, they would just reach out and they would use that group. And then obviously we also have user. So I can actually target an individual user. And then we've got things like, groups accept, others accept, you can start to filter all kinds of things. So you can really control things here.
Can you set up your own?
I don't know. We do have I know that one of the things that was recently implemented in SignalR is kind of a spec. So if you want to augment the API, so yes, you could do that. Like everybody who has green hair, the clients.green hair people or something like that.
Well, or if your clients can belong to more than one group, I guess you could just manage it that way, right?
Yeah. Well, in that case, if you would say, I think you can actually say clients.groups, and you can pass multiple groups as well. So admins, contributors, not readers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but if you have people that belong to multiple groups as well, right? So they're a dev and a PM or something like that. Then
you might want to send it to the dev and not the PM or vice versa.
Right.
The devs and the PMs, who knows? Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of the way that the API looks. I don't have any other API things on this slide, but I just wanted to pull that up to make sure I covered all the clients areas. The other thing that you can do with the hub, which is nice, is the hub classes. The hub is an abstract class, and at one point we had, when SignalR was born, this concept of clients dot subset of clients dot, and then you would look at the IntelliSense and it would say dynamic method. So that was when we were doing dynamics in C#. It was actually the first time I used dynamics. It was kind of a dirty word in the .NET community until I started using SignalR. I didn't really understand why, and it was still. Dynamics give a lot of .NET folks heartburn still, so there are some folks who are resistant.
What do you mean by dynamic?
In C# you have this concept of you might have an object that's a dynamic object, which means I'm gonna I know I can call the hub is a great example of it because I can tell you I know how to handle the following 3 events, and you're going to call these 3 methods. The only people who care that they're there are us.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that gets weird, especially if you want to do type specificity. Like I always want to hit dot and know what the method looks like. That drives people crazy. So it's really more of a friendliness kind of concept. So now there are even multiple types of hubs. The default hub, actually, you could say send async, and you tell it the name of the method, and then you pass it a payload.
Right.
But then if you were to inherit from hub, that's what you get. If you inherit from dynamic hub, that's when you get the dynamics back. And then we even have one that's kind of interesting that's a generic. That's a hub of T. Right. And in that case, you get that strong typing. I could say, I know that you're going to hand me back this interface, and I can see the interface and I can work to it.
Right.
So that's definitely evolved. That's a huge introduction to the way the hubs work. And then the other thing that every hub knows is when somebody connects and when somebody disconnects. So you can actually handle that logic on the server side as well. So, when I connect to something, I can then issue a command back to that connection. I can say, I know you're connected now. If you want to do work, you can do some work. In the synth example that you saw me working on when we walked in, it's exactly what happens. I have to make that connection happen before I can send messages to the synthesizer.
Right.
So I need to make that connection, make sure that I don't get a failure back, and then I start doing the rest of the MIDI work. So that's kind of how that all dials in. So,
is your job search stuck? Maybe you're not getting any interviews with employers, or maybe you are, but no job offers. Or you may be new and not even know where to start. This is Charles Max Wood, and I'm releasing a new course and ebook on how to find a job as a software developer. The course walks you through the process of finding the types of companies you want to work for, getting their attention, and putting your best foot forward as the candidate they want. I've coached dozens of developers in looking for jobs and have been able to help several people find jobs within 2 weeks to 2 months. So whether you're new to development, can't find a great job that fits what you want, or are looking for remote work from an area without a strong tech community, I can help. Go to getacoderjob.com and sign up today.
It sounds really, really interesting. So How do people get started with this? They just sign up for Azure and it's just one of the options in there?
Oh, no, you don't need Azure for SignalR. If you want to get started with SignalR, you can go to docs.ms.com, docs.microsoft.com, or docs.com. If you go to the .NET area, like on the homepage of docs.microsoft.com, we've got all the different categories and all the different products. And for now, the SignalR stuff is definitely a component of the .NET team. So if you were to go to .NET here, and then you could literally look around for web, and I have to find it, but what's nice is we have this .NET Core API reference. I could actually go into this API reference and do a search for SignalR, and this is actually going to come back with, I'm not going to find it. I have to look around. .NET Standard 2.0. It might not, I have to find it later. I've actually got, in one of my decks, I've got a link. We have a doc page that has literally for the JavaScript folks, I'll give you this link for the show notes. We actually have a JavaScript reference page that you can go to and learn all about the different things that you can do in the JavaScript client. So I can actually go, see here we've got the ASP.NET SignalR package.
Yep.
If I go into that guy, this is literally everything that you can do in that JavaScript client. We've got detailed information on all of it. Most of these reference docs are generated. So we actually generate directly from the code. So if you go there, you can learn all about it.
And as soon as you install the client package, you're good to go?
Pretty much. I mean,
you don't have to go set up a hub or anything somewhere or anything like that?
You would have to have a hub. I think you have to have a hub on the server side. So you could literally put a hub up on the server. That would be a .NET thing now, I think. I don't think we have a non.NET hub server-side thing yet. I don't know if that's coming. I'm not on the engineering team, so I don't know the answer to that. But if you also go to signalr.net, you can actually learn about it on there as well. We have some of the information out there, and you can definitely look and see how everything works. The GitHub for SignalR is github.com/SignalR. And we have all the documentation you would need on getting started. If you wanted to do this in the .NET world, obviously you would use NuGet. You would just install the SignalR package. If you want to do things on JavaScript, that's when you would use npm. So you would just do npm install ASP.NET SignalR, and you get everything. But effectively, the workflow is create your hub, run your hub, and then your JavaScript code just reaches out and makes calls back and forth to that hub. You can have a chat app working in less than 30, 40 lines of code. So it's really, really easy. And then the docs have tons of documentation on it as well, and a lot of different sample apps. Here we go, Introduction to SignalR. So we have an entire SignalR area in the docs MS.com area. If you want, I could email you some of these links. Make sure you get them on the show.
Yeah, that would be great. But yeah, so you don't have to know .NET.
You don't have to know .NET.
Yeah, you keep mentioning .NET, and I just want to make sure that people understand, hey, look, Yeah,
you don't have to know .NET. I mean, it was created by the .NET team.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and this is something that has actually come up. I've mentioned him a few times, Anthony Chu. We've had a couple conversations. We want SignalR to spread to other communities.
Right.
So I do think it behooves us at some point to have something where we don't need to have that hub on the back end. I think that you could actually wire up the SignalR service in Azure and send messages to that, but I think you still need a hub to use that as your backplane.
Right.
So at this point, that is I don't want to say a limitation because I'm a .NET guy, but that is a requirement, I think, on the server side. I can get more information and we can update the notes later on if that happens to be the case. But I do believe you have to have a SignalR hub.
Yeah, but it makes sense. And
I
mean, on any coordination layer, you're going to need something, on your back end.
Right.
So,
but you and I could do JavaScript all the way.
Yeah.
We could literally have a .NET application that has one class in it, starts up and is just a hub, and you and I just send messages back and forth to it. And as long as you and I are emailing and communicating, I'm going to call the method foo.
Yeah.
You need to know how to handle it. So, and like I said, the syntax is your typical event-driven syntax. It's just, connection on, and then, I'm looking for some code to show it to you. It's like connection on, handle it. Like that's too much. I don't want to show you that one. But we've definitely made some more investments. So,
Yeah, but in JavaScript, in Node, in the browser, I mean, we're pretty comfortable with event-driven.
Yeah.
So
And it's very promise-based.
Yeah.
The new JavaScript client is all promise-based, so you would have no problem there. Actually did something the other night I haven't done. I used, talking earlier about the REST API plus SignalR combination. I used the fetch API. I'd never used that before in JavaScript. That was pretty cool. It's nicer to use that than have to pull something like jQuery. No offense to jQuery. Love it. But to get all those, to do it without all the libraries, it's just great.
Yeah, we keep moving forward, and you also have pretty convenient ways with most of the front-end frameworks to manage your HTTP calls. And So it's going to look different depending on what people are using. But yeah, you pull that together, you're using Vue or React or Angular or something, and they have their HTTP library, and you just
party on it. Yeah. Exactly. And that was an early thing that I was actually looking through some of the old, in prep for the show today, I was reading through some of the old bugs from 2011, 2013 and beyond. And one of the issues that repeatedly came up was, like, I love SignalR, I respect jQuery, I'm using Angular, or I'm using Vue or whatever. Like, I don't want to have to pull in jQuery just to use SignalR.
Right.
You don't have to anymore.
Right.
So SignalR is all native JavaScript at this point. So you don't have to use any libraries. So
that's a happy thing.
It's a happy thing. I remember there was a community member in, I think in India, who I reached out to him at one point because he'd written a blog post, and I had one of these sessions, and I wanted to show SignalR with Angular. And he showed me how to do this funky dance where Angular and jQuery work together. And I was like, I just feel really dirty right now. This is not cool, man. But, I was looking through some of the issues last night, and the day they announced that jQuery was no longer a requirement, people were excited. Again, nothing against jQuery. jQuery saved all of our readers on too many occasions to throw it under the bus. But at the end of the day, some people just don't want to pull that down. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and they want to use different frameworks and whatnot. I mean, I think during this show we've had 3 or 4 JavaScript frameworks get released. You know what I mean?
Probably.
They've come out so fast.
Yeah.
So,
New framework.js, yeah.
exactly. Somebody mentioned one to me the other day. I had not even heard about it before, but Jeff Fritz, the big Twitch guy, we were chatting about some JavaScript framework, and he had suggested that I try something instead of Webpack. It was
okay. PARCEL?
PARCEL. Yeah. How is that? Is it cool?
I haven't used it yet.
You don't use it?
No.
So I have a question for you. I'm not really a front-end web dev anymore. I haven't done that in quite a while. I've been in marketing for the last year and docs before that. But one thing that I've seen a lot is like Node-Sass. Do you have any recommendations on how to make that workflow a little bit less painful for folks who are on Windows?
Node-Sass, like the CSS Sass? Or?
Yes, like the CSS Sass. Like if you're doing it on Windows, there's a little bit of pain. You have to install like Python, and then there's building the packages doesn't always work. And I figured that's such a ubiquitous package. I wanted to ask you, do you have guidance for somebody like me who hasn't really used it that much?
I haven't used that either. Honestly, my experience with Sass is mostly out of Ruby.
Okay, cool.
And that's where it originated.
Nice.
But yeah, that's generally where I've done it.
Okay, that's cool. I haven't learned Ruby. That's definitely a challenging one. I looked at it for a little while, and then I haven't really dug into it. Is that more your speed on the server side?
Typically, yeah.
Cool.
I've been getting into Elixir and Phoenix lately as well.
What's Phoenix? I haven't heard of that.
So Phoenix is a web framework that is written in Elixir.
Oh, cool.
And Elixir's language that's written on the Erlang VM.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
And so it's got it's functional, it's really fast.
Nice.
I mean, it's got a lot of things going for it. If you're used to the object-oriented style of programming, which if you come from Ruby, you really are.
Yeah.
Then, it takes a bit of getting used to. It's like, oh, okay, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And then once you get used to the functional way of thinking of things, then you start looking at it and you go to make an assignment or 2 or 3, and you figure out that equals is pattern matching and not assignment or comparison. And so that'll throw you for another loop.
Yeah.
But once you figure out those features, they almost become power features for you.
Huh, that's cool.
And so, I mean, there are definite trade-offs. I think Ruby's still easier.
Right.
But, I mean, Elixir has a lot of things going for it. It's really interesting. Nice. It's a newer community, and it's interesting to see where it goes. But
I've heard of it recently, but I haven't looked into it too much. I have to start doing some research on this. Of course, I'm not going to get back on Elixir Lang. That'll work.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
I'll do some research on that. The last language I tried to pick up a little bit was Go. That was fun. I liked it. I don't get some of the gestalt of the language yet, but I did like it. This is cool, though.
Yeah, there are a lot of interesting things going out there in the programming world. And,
there are.
If you open yourself up to them, you can learn some really cool stuff.
You really can. I have always I've always had kind of a mental block around Java, just the language itself, which is ironic, and it was very similar to other languages that I'm very familiar with. But at one point, I was PMing the Java SDK, and I asked some of the guys, I said, this stuff will work on any JVM language, right? He said, yeah. So that night, I took a sample that had taken me probably 3 weeks to write in Java. It was terrible in Java, and had to bug the devs. What about this? What about that? A couple hundred lines of code. It's like, let me try this in Kotlin. So I got it working in Kotlin in probably an hour, and then I tried it in Scala and got it working in 45 minutes, and was like, I need to go out there more. I need to explore this stuff more, and I did for a bit. I like Scala a lot. It's a great little language. I've had fun with that. Have not got too deep in it, but I do like the language a lot. Ruby, I want to learn some more of that. So that's a good language. I have some good friends back east that do that, big in the community.
Yep.
So, and these headphones are nice.
So, anything else that we should dive into with respect to SignalR?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I've basically brain dumped everything that I know at this point. There was a period of time where I was really dug in with SignalR. I was giving a lot of shows on it and everything. And I've been definitely more on the Azure side for the past couple of years, and coming back to SignalR after the APIs have really evolved and the performance has really evolved. It's kind of been like all over again. So that's been a lot of fun. I would definitely just drive people to the docs pages because they really are about the best place. Here's one that you'd be interested in. This is one that a lot of people are saying we should just call it SignalR. I don't know. But this is basically a guide for how to handle anything that could happen on the JavaScript client side, and talks about the generated proxy. That was the old generated proxy. Shows you how to wire it all up and everything. But all this stuff is actually all out there on the docs. I'm probably going to work on updating a few of these as well in the future. But I would just stay tuned. We have a lot of other ideas we want to do. The guys on the SignalR service side, they have a lot of exciting things.
Right.
The throughput that they have is amazing. If you have like a high traffic site and you want to like show people things in real time, I would definitely take a peek at that. If you're okay having the one thing on the server that's the hub, and you would definitely be able to party on it from a JavaScript perspective. I mean, you just literally have an empty C# class, back it up with that SignalR service in Azure, and now you've literally got unlimited real-time capabilities. I think their benchmarking is something like 100,000 simultaneous connections. So think of 100,000 simultaneous connections going at 2.5 million messages a second. It's like mind-boggling, dude. So, and at one point we had that without any backplane. There was a point where we were talking in hundreds of thousands on this machine. Like, it could handle that much. Load tests were like running like crazy. Make sure we knew when things were going to fall down. And I remember early on hearing that Damien asked me, he goes, "What do you think the first thing that falls down?" CPU? Not CPU. CPU is flat. What was it? It was network. Like the network couldn't keep up. Like we were sending so much data.
Oh wow!
Like we basically had to upgrade the network card and machine just to make sure that we had enough throughput to just send the stuff.
Oh nice!
Like memory was flat, CPU was flat, network was flooded.
Yep.
So, and then get into all of the kinds of implications there, which is one of the reasons why they've implemented the new streaming stuff with the buffering on either end, so you can really handle your buffer and really control things well. So, but I would definitely look at it from a JavaScript perspective because you can really make dynamic applications with it. Really do some nice stuff on the UI side. So, and then the Java is definitely coming too. So we've got an Android client, Android sample out there that we could show you how to use SignalR to communicate with the backend from an Android phone. That's pretty neat. Mobility, I would say you want to be careful because you're always going to have those connections going up and down. Right. So if you're doing something on Xamarin or you're doing something, in Java, I would apply the Spider-Man rule for anything mobility with SignalR because when those connections drop, you're going to have to relaunch. Right. So just think about that. But again, if you're doing REST out and SignalR for push, it's really like brain dead. It's like super, super simple. So
awesome.
Yep.
All right. Well, one thing that we do on this show at the end of the show is picks.
Do you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device, on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
Do you have a few things you want to shout out about?
I could shout out about tons of stuff. First thing I would do shout out is to my lovely team on the general session. Anthony, Cecil, Jessica, James, Hanselman, and Seth, and all my team backstage. Like, you guys busted your tail for the last couple of months, and I want to thank you so much for making that a great success. That was great. Stuff. Let's talk about stuff. Things that I've been having a lot of fun with recently. I want to give a big shout out to Korg. I love Korg gear. All my synthesizers are Korg.
Nice.
And if you are into, like, if you've thought about wanting to make electronic music or experiment with stuff, I would look at their Volca line. That's the little sampler you saw me using here.
Right.
You can go out and you can buy like a $2,000 sampler and not know how to use it, or you can like get started with something like that and work your way up. I've spent the last 4 years learning how to like use that equipment, so that's been a lot of fun. And other things I would. No, you didn't say shout out. What did you call it?
A pick.
A pick. I would definitely. I've got to give some love to the Seahawks because they need all the love they can get right now.
You must be based in Washington.
I'm based in Washington.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm based in Washington. And obviously my beautiful 2 kids. They're awesome. So
Awesome.
that's about all I can think of off the top of my head. I have too many hobbies. I could be here all day giving up.
Oh,
picks,
yeah.
man. What about you? What do you have?
So I'll do a couple of picks. One of the things that I use when I travel is ExpressVPN.
Oh.
You know, especially on hotel Wi-Fi. Like here at Microsoft Ignite, I'm mostly okay just using the Wi-Fi. I mean, there are a zillion people if they really want to, pick me out of the crowd
exactly.
for whatever reason, whatever. I still tend to use it at the conference just because, especially if I'm going to like check my bank account or something.
Right. Yeah.
But other than that, it works really well, and it really doesn't slow down my connection at all.
Nice.
So
Cool.
I've been pretty happy with it.
Nice.
So one thing that I'll shout out about, it's something that I have here, and it's mostly just to connect other stuff to my laptop, because I have one of the amazing MacBooks.
You have that thing.
That
What do you think of that?
So yeah. So I pulled it out. He sees it. You don't. So let me explain what I'm holding in my hand. So I have a couple of these from a couple of different brands. And so the latest MacBooks, they have the USB-C Thunderbolt, 3, 4, 10, I don't remember what number it is, on the side, and nothing else, which makes me so happy. I love it. But yeah, you can't connect anything to it because nothing actually connects with USB-C. Anyway, so I keep this in my bag. This one is branded J5, and it has 2 USB-C ports, 2 USB ports, an SD card reader, and a mini SD card reader in it, and an HDMI port on it. And
I looked at those. That could have saved my bacon a few times.
So they're pretty nice to have, especially if you have one of these amazing MacBook Pros.
They are wonderful.
And since the USB-Cs plug in either way, you can hook it up whichever way you want, which is also nice. But yeah, so I have to read the SD card after we record this and put it in my machine.
Nice.
And so I can just slide it into this, or I can use the SD card reader they have there via USB.
Nice.
It actually fits better in their reader instead of this reader, but
Cool.
because this one's really shallow.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
But
That might be the next thing.
anyway, so it's nice to have. I have had this on my laptop with something in it and had my laptop slide off the table it was on. And yeah, it destroyed the SD card that was in it. And but this seems to have stood up to it pretty well. So I'm pretty happy with it. I have another one that's another brand. It works just as well.
Cool.
Yeah, anyway, it's kind of nice to have if you have to connect your laptop to anything other than power.
That's cool. I guess the other one that I would have, you give me an inspiration now. The other pick that I would make, have you ever heard of the Logitech Spotlight? It's a clicker. Mine's not charged, so I can't really show you its functionality right now, but it is I think they're actually called Logi now. I think they kind of changed their brand. But it is a clicker for people who do presentations frequently. But it not only is more functional in terms of the fact that if you wanted to, if you want to click, you can click. You can also make it zoom. But the form factor is it's about the same size as the device that he's holding. And what's nice about it is that instead of just having a laser pointer, it's got a spotlight. So when you shine it at the screen, you can hit the spotlight button and it makes a big white circle. You can move it all around. People go nuts for it. I gave a presentation in Sweden. I sold 2 while I was on stage. People were like, "What is that?" And I told them, and they bought it. So Logitech, I love your spotlight, and I think he likes it too. So if I could charge it, I'd show you how it works.
Yeah, I mean, generally when you're presenting, you just need like a button to advance or not advance, right?
Right.
I hate the laser pointers.
I do too.
But
this
wiggles all over the place
exactly.
while you're holding it up.
But this doesn't do that. It's smooth. Like the circle just stays where you want it. You can highlight somebody's face, or you can highlight it.
Yeah.
Super fantastic.
I think you might have sold another one of those.
They're great. They're fantastic. That's about all I have today.
Awesome.
I really like my AirPods too. They've been pretty nice.
Yeah, AirPods are really nice.
AirPods are nice.
I have a set of those, and I use them all the time.
That's
I think
cool.
I'm going to... My wife doesn't listen to any of the shows. I might get her a pair for Christmas.
Nice.
So.
That'd be funny. And this is one of the chord vocals that I was talking about. This is actually the chord vocal sample.
Oh, nice.
And the sample, basically, you can just load in sounds. I could put some sounds from our show in here, and you can hear it a little bit. It's kind of quiet, but...
How much are they?
That's probably each one of these. So there's the sample, a bass, keys,
Right.
a bass drum, a regular drum, and then one called an FM for frequency modulation.
Right.
Each one of them is about 160 US.
Oh, that's doable.
Totally reasonable. And it depends on kind of what sound you want to make. You know what I mean? I've got 5 of the 6 that exist.
Right.
The 6th one I don't want. This is not my thing. And I've also got a microchord keyboard, and I use a different company's products called Arturia for my MIDI controllers. And I have 2 controllers, and they control all the devices. So that's kind of a fun time home setup.
I'll bet.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I haven't done it enough recently because I've been conferencing. So at some point, I want to go have next week and do a little music. So it'll be kind of fun. And if people come to the session tomorrow, they'll be able to see some of that too. I know this won't be out by then, but if people come to the session tomorrow, they'll actually be able to play the instrument from the audience. So that'll be kind of fun. That was me getting excited earlier. So
He was
awesome.
in here, puts his arms in the air, all happy, and yeah.
It was awesome.
I know how that goes.
Because it's super exciting. When code works, it's just a great gratification.
Yeah, totally.
So fantastic.
So, the thing I've been playing with lately as far as coding goes is I've been working on a system to manage the podcasts. So, in fact, right before I came in here, I was writing the part where I invite members of my team that work on the podcasts to the app so that
cool.
they can do their job
nice
part of my account. So
yeah, but I listened last week. I think you had 3 or 4 people on the show. There were quite a few. Is that normal? Do you have
yes,
3
that's
or 4
normal.
guests normal? Okay.
And so I also built in earlier today the part where I can invite the hosts.
Cool. Nice.
But the rest of it's the production team. So the producer, the editor, show notes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Does that have to be like a real time thing? See where I'm going with this?
No, it doesn't.
So that would actually be kind of interesting. We should do an experiment where I'll put a hub out there and give you a URL, and we can just see if you can party on it with your JavaScript client. See what you can do with it.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Just
cool.
do something on YouTube or something.
Yeah, just give you a URL and see what you can do with it. Yeah, because effectively we're just sending messages through.
Yeah.
So you can do whatever you want. But I thank you for having me on. This has been great.
Thanks for coming.
No problem. I'm sorry to have less JavaScript skillage than most of the people that probably listen to your show.
No, it's fine. It's interesting because sometimes we get people that are really deep into JavaScript, and sometimes we get people who, like you, aren't as deep into JavaScript, but you have experience with something that may solve a problem that somebody has.
Right. That's great.
And so, I don't mind having those conversations and just kind of, getting wherever we wind up at. Mm-hmm. And then letting people go and check out what's out there. So
it's cool.
You folks listening, go check it out. Go see if you can make it work.
Please do. Please check out the SignalR stuff. And if you're in the JavaScript side, if you have any ideas or pull requests or issues, SignalR is open source. So feel free to look at the GitHub and send us something. We'd love to get some feedback from you.
Good deal.
Cool.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this one up. And thank you for coming, Brady.
Thanks a lot, man. It's been fun.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.